Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 of Duke's Download. I'm your host, Duke Mason, and I am so excited to have with us today one of the leading interior designers on the planet, one of my good friends, and the author of the new book, Designing History, The Extraordinary Art and Style of the Obama White House, Michael Smith. He may be on. I think he just sent us a request. So, connecting now. So excited for this.
Hey,
Hey, Michael.
hey, Duke, how are you?
It's so good to see you. I'm good. How are you?
Really, really well. Really well. It's a little close. I'm going to back it up just a tad. Too much dermatological.
No, you look really good.
Thank you.
I
Thank
have
you.
to, well, I'm trying to look at the background there. Are you in what city are you in at the moment?
I'm in LA.
Oh, you are. Oh, you're in.
Yes.
Okay, I see. You're in the
LA where I live.
rental house, or is your house done? Your permanent
No, my house is never going to be done. Ever. Ever. This is,
I got to see is it Mapleton house?
yeah, that's the
Before,
old house.
before
So
renovation.
I'm now in a house built for Tyrone Power by Paul Williams right now that we've rented. It's kind of great. It's a really nice house, so
It,
it's
it
good.
looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's good.
Is
It's
that all
good.
your decor, or is that just
Uh,
the house?
well, I didn't do a lot in the 30s. I mean, I'm old, but I'm not that old. Yeah, but it's fairly original. Yeah, I mean, we put in a bunch of stuff. I feel like you've never been here. It's good.
No, I don't think I've been to that
We
house.
have to have you here. Well, listen, it used to be, we were supposed to be here a year, and I think it's going to be three, so maybe a little longer, but it's okay. How are you?
I think I met you for the first time. It was like this was it December 2017 is when it was, and then
God, I can't believe you know that.
you
That's
guys were gracious enough to have me at your Christmas party. It was a Christmas party plus a book party for Pete Souza,
oh
for
yeah, we love Pete Souza. We
which was
love
a
him.
beautiful book and a great party. But no, I'm so grateful to you for doing this. And, of course, I've seen the book. It's beautiful. And I also really love the New York Times article that Maureen
It
Down.
was funny. It was funny, right?
It was great.
Uh, it
Really
was
great.
very funny. Maureen's great, and yeah. I mean, she's a very, very good writer. You're a little bit like, anytime you get that much ink, you're a little scared they're gonna
No,
uh, barbecue you. But she did a very nice job, and I think it was great.
it was pretty, I mean, it was very complimentary. And I think it very insightful about your whole journey, which I didn't know. I mean, obviously I knew about all the stuff that you did more recently, but I didn't know about how your career started and how, like, the fact that when you were a kid, that you were so interested in different cultures that you would like put your mattress on the floor
I
for.
know it's weird. It does seem like something you would have done too, actually. But it was yeah, it was good. I mean, it seemed to work out. I didn't realize I was so freaky until later in my life, but I felt that was like everybody read Shogun and decided that they would only eat Japanese food for 2 years, stuff like that. Normal kid stuff that everybody does. So
It's like they knew from a young age that you were not going to be, a normal kid.
it worked out.
Normal,
It strangely worked out okay. I mean, I think it worked out okay.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, look, no, I say that as a compliment because, like, for me, I was obsessed with like Lon Chaney and wearing costumes and weird things when I was a
Well,
kid.
that you come by that. That's just genetics.
Yeah.
It's just genetics. Yeah.
No, but no, I mean that is a good thing. They probably figured that you were not going to end up being like a normal person, that you were going to do unusual, interesting things
Exactly.
in your life, you know?
You're too kind. I'm sure they felt it much. It was much worse. But how's it going? Are you in? You're in LA, right? You're in West Hollywood. Where are you?
I am. I'm in West Hollywood, and I've been here basically nonstop since March. But I've gone to Palm Springs a couple times just to get out of town for a couple days. But I was, I'm sure, like, what has your travel schedule been like? Have you been in New York? Have you been in Palm
Well,
Springs?
we've been basically here, but basically between here and Palm Springs, and then a little bit. we rented a house. It's the beach house for a little bit in Laguna, like a shack that was so great. And anyway, it was, it's been good, but it's weird. I'm ready for this to be over. I want to be sedated and wake up in mid-November post-election. I think like everyone, it's my recipe. I think a lot of people should follow it. It's ice cream, tequila, and low-grade depression and not being able to sleep. It seems to, if you add melatonin, you get freaky dreams and stuff on top of it, which seems to work really well for me. But yeah, it's good. As long as you keep the face kind of fat for Zoom, it's good. You kind of look younger, but
Hey,
black shroud to the floor.
you actually, I swear, actually, you look. I mean, always looked good, but you look like you've actually leaned out a bit. Is that?
You are
No.
so, yes,
Well, no,
it's true.
the picture of you that I'm assuming was taken for the New York Times profile. You look so good. I was like, wow, he's looking.
Thank you. I made her stand in a cherry picker and shoot down. I think that's when you're our age, Duke, you'll figure these things out.
Okay, I'm already. My mom and I, we both have dealt with the body weight issues our whole lives. So that's something that, from a young age, is something and I'm assuming it'll only get,
Yeah, it just gets worse.
Be there.
It gets worse. Yeah.
But no, so I wanted to say, I was so grateful to you for having me at your house which I think gets paused for some reason. The last time I saw you in person, which would have been when you guys had me at your house in Rancho Mirage. And I just find the sort of story of how that house, came about and what you guys, did with it so fascinating. Maybe you can tell people a little bit about
Well,
that.
no, the whole house story. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'd worked on this when they sort of converted Sunnylands into a museum, the Annenberg Estate in Palm Springs, with Fred Fisher, who's a really good contemporary architect in LA. He built the kind of visitor center, and he asked me to work on it. And Wallace Annenberg, who we were friendly with, who I love, asked me to work on it. And I could see this kind of ribbon of a house on top of the hill, and it was really interesting. And I was sort of, I mean, my history with Palm Springs is I just so hated it as a kid. I was completely traumatized by it as a kid. So I was sort of, but I realized when I got older that, as I said to somebody, I didn't realize that warm sun felt good on old bones until I had old bones. You know what I mean? So, but I loved it. We sort of were into it, and so I would see this house, and then it just was this crazy thing where I went to see it one day, and it was a complete disaster. Someone had lived in it who had basically kind of had dementia and had turned the water and the electrical off 5 years before, which is not very good talk about deferred maintenance, wasn't very good. So we ultimately bought it and kind of restored it over a long period of time. The joke is we had like a little bit of money. We're like, we'll fix the whole house and then we'll later, kind of come back and we'll live in it and then we'll just figure out what we're going to do. We spent all the money on redoing the pool and the guest house, which was kind of par for the course. We lived there for a while and we did it over a period of time. And then crazily, which connects back to the book, because it's sort of the end of my book, we got a call in Palm Springs and President Obama had come to stay at Sunnylands. I had to get a mattress for the official guest room and all the stuff that Sunnylands people call me kind of frantically. And he said, we're here. Can we come see the house? Can I come see the house? And so James and I kind of rushed around. And there's a picture of the first time he came where we're kind of sitting on the terrace of our house. And he kind of sussed it out. And he loved coming to Sunnylands, but he liked kind of our house. And so he, as a seated president, stayed there a lot, which was great. And so we have a battle with Sunnyland where they claim to be the Western White House, but we now claim
I've
to be
never been to Sunnylands, but I've always wanted
Right.
to go. And to be honest, I mean, just from having seen pictures of it, your place is a lot better, I think.
No, God, that's so no. Well, we don't have a private golf course.
I think your place is
no.
honestly the most beautiful house I think I've ever been to in my entire life.
Oh my God, that's so nice. Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
for those of you watching who may not have seen it, you should go on Google and Images and look it up because it's just like beyond.
It's nice. It's on. You can get it on it's Michael Smith Palm Springs Architectural Digest put it on the cover, which was great. Our friend Margaret Russell, who also co-wrote the book with me, kind of put it when she was editor, put it on the cover, and it was great. It's a really wonderful house. And the desert, where you go, and it's like you go there and you're there for 2 days, and you immediately feel like you've been somewhere significant. You feel like you've been away in 24 hours, where you don't really get that from a lot of other places. So it's a very good retreat for us.
And no wonder, no wonder you had to spend so much money on that pool in the guest house, because the pool alone is like so magnificent. Everything is just like is beyond. I think is the word, beyond.
It was good. It's good. It's a good place. We were there. The air quality is, you're in the same scenario, not as great as you would hope right now, and the air was a little bit better there. But listen, we live in a very strange world right now.
I know.
Yeah.
Did you first meet President Obama through Sunnyland? Is that how you guys first actually met?
No, it's a really interesting story. It's in the book. There's a letter that a friend of mine whose house I did in the desert, a friend of mine, Catherine Malkin, sent a letter to Desiree Rogers, who had been made the Obama's first social secretary, and Catherine and Desiree lived in the same building in Chicago. And one day, Catherine and I were having a conversation about post-election, what should the Obama White House be like? How should it feel? It was like, this artist should be in there, and this artist, and it should be inclusive, and all this stuff. And Catherine said to me, "I'm going to get you this job." And I was like, "That's so great, right?" And I had never read the letter until we started working on the book. But so she wrote this quite amazing letter and sent it to Desiree Rogers with some of my books, which she bizarrely had to run all over because in Chicago they were sold out. And she sent it to them, and we think nothing of it. It's like, that was great. Of course she's going to get me the job. Of course it's going to happen. And then James and I are in Jamaica, and the phone rings, and I'm on the beach, literally, and the phone rings, and it's Desiree saying, we'd really like to talk to you about this. And so it was a kind of a crazy week where I was on the phone doing these conference calls about pre-Zoom, thank God, just regular phone calls, but trying to organize like how it would work and what the logistics were and everything. And then I went right from Jamaica to Chicago to see the Obamas. It was dark at 3:00 in the afternoon in November. And I showed up, and I talked about it. The driver was like, the Obamas live around here. And I was like, no, really? That's so crazy. And I walked a couple blocks through barricades until I got to their house. And the first thing that I sort of saw when I walked in the front door was Mrs. Obama and the girls. And it's this relationship that has been around for almost a decade. So or literally a decade, I think. And listen, I'm so honored to have had the chance to have worked with them at all, but to have done the White House is amazing. And it's a continuation of that relationship. I'm working on the Presidential Center in Chicago, and we did a house in Washington for them, and it's great.
Were you also involved in helping to select the artist for the official portrait or portraits?
I was. You're very well referenced. Yes, I was. Really, it was a great museum director called Thelma Golden, who is head of the Studio Museum of Harlem. It was really her project. She's much smarter than I, but I had a backup singer-like role in the situation, but it was good. It was good. It was great. And, those reveals, which I hadn't seen the finished portraits, but those reveals at the National Portrait Gallery were quite amazing. And those portraits are, they're extraordinary. Extraordinary.
They are. So they're beautiful. And regarding the White House, of course, even 10 years ago, you were already a world famous, successful designer, but for anyone, I would imagine it would have been kind of a surreal, incredible experience to be like, wait a second, okay, I'm designing the Oval Office, basically. It's an iconic, maybe the most iconic room in the world. Would you say that out of all the rooms, the different parts of the White House, that was the part that you were the most interested or intimidated by? Like, what what parts of the White House that were you the most interested or sort of excited to be involved with?
I mean, I think the whole thing, it was, I mean, it was sort of like you kind of ramped up to the Oval Office. Originally, it was supposed to be quite early in the process, and then, the financial crisis was going on, and understandably, no, the president, nobody thought it was really the time to sort of work on his office, and so it happened a couple of years later. But it was. I mean, it was all kind of thrilling. I mean, the girls' rooms were the first order of business, the first thing to do to make these. And they're so little and so kind of adorable, and now they're really big and still kind of adorable. Um, yeah, but to do their rooms and to sort of listen to them and try to understand their personalities as kids was kind of unbelievable. And uh, I mean, there's stories in the book that are so kooky about like, they're both great, and but I always remember things of like Sasha would, they had to make their own beds, which was great, and Sasha would only sleep on like half of her bed, so she only had to make half. I mean, it's just funny. They were like super normal kids in a kind of unbelievable, otherworldly experience, and I think that part of that to be bridged between those two worlds was something that was really fun and kind of interesting. And then to do the bedroom of the leader of the free world was good. And you want a very well rested president. Some people could say you could tell the difference between one who's not well rested and one who is. And it was great. It was all kind of surreal. And then I'd get these calls, saying, we're going to a foreign country, and we need, the State Department's calling, and we need to know what we should give these foreign leaders. And so I didn't have this book then, which would have been the obvious, but so I had other ideas of artists and people who should make glass, beautiful hand-blown jars to house the honey, and stuff like that.
Wow.
Things that were kind of crazy, and that's all kind of in the book. So it was a kind of sort of kind of crazy dash for kind of 8 years, but really extraordinary and fun. And you never get, it's never casual to go to the White House. You never when you get, I think about a little bit in the book that you have your suit ready, and it's the last thing you do is you put your suit on. And I would stay at the Adams always, and I would walk across Lafayette Square, but there was no tear gas in those days. It was just straight up Lafayette Square, and I'd walk across and go to the gate at the East Wing, and always was on like a list for an appointment and to be let in. And it was always raining or snowing or blazing hot, and they would get there, and the Secret Service would be like, "Well, you're not on the list." So by the time I got in, my suit was either sweated all the way through, or soaked with rain, or had snow in my hair, or I was always, my preparation of kind of like being perfect was completely screwed up, and I was rattled. But so the White House always teaches you a lesson for your kind of narcissism. But it was good. It was great to go and listen. I mean, the Obamas are so wonderful and always so thoughtful, and nothing's, look at, I think on her Twitter page, she calls herself the hugger in chief. I mean, I think that's never changed. And, they're so extraordinary in the sense of what you see is kind of what you get. I mean, it's pretty much who they are. There's not a lot of artifice, and, they're empathetic and caring, and the stuff that was critical and important to them when they were in the White House is the same thing that they kind of do now. So
I thought it was really interesting, and I think you said it in the book as well, but I know in the New York Times article how you were aware that every a lot of the time during each administration there are changes to the style and the decor of the White House, but I do think it's sad but fascinating how much of a difference there is between the style and the aesthetic and just everything between the Obama White House and the Trump White House, and how we, like, when he was running, we all made jokes like, oh well, he'll put gold on everything, and and actually it turned out that in the Oval Office, the curtains, I know they were actually originally the Clinton curtains, but
right.
It's so gold and like sort of, over the top now. Well, so I think I think it actually is fascinating that the decor of both the Obama and the Trump White House, designs actually signifies and symbolizes a lot about each of them. You know.
Well, I think listen, that's not exceptional. I mean, I think to be fair, every president has had their kind of aesthetic impact. The Bushes borrowed a lot of Western art from their friends, kind of beautiful Western art, because it was what they were into, and lived with it really well, and left the house in super great shape. I mean, they were beyond gracious to all of us, and they left the house in really great shape. But I mean, from the Reagans to the impact presidents have, I think people don't know. It's a little bit in the book, but when Louis Comfort Tiffany, did these sort of Tiffany glass crazy walls of glass in the entrance hall of the White House. I mean, there was some really, really avant-garde sort of versions of the White House over time, over various years. Given the moment that they existed in. So giant stuffed stuffed giant trophies and stuff under Theodore Roosevelt and things like that. So I think that every president makes their impact, and it's for history to decide.
Well, I think it'll be pretty clear in the end, which was preferable especially between the two of them. But no, I think it is just fascinating, as you said. Like, you knew that your take was going to be sort of the take that was, for this specific sort of moment in history, and that, in the future, everybody would be able to leave their own mark,
No, absolutely. And I think, listen, Mrs. Obama here's the book. I have the book right here. But I want to show you that I'm obsessed with this picture. I don't know if you saw it, but there's Mrs. Obama's picture, which is just, I mean, come on, look at that amazing sweetness and greatness. In her introduction, she talks about, the sort of importance of, being the first African-American family, and all this stuff that she sort of this responsibility, and kind of being the first in so many ways. And I think, also just being the first family with young children, the first, young family for a very long time in the White House, was also super, super impactful. And, but we were, I think you realize, you knew the Obamas were going to be a huge source of interest to everyone. I mean, every time she wore tennis shoes, people freaked out, or anytime, whatever they did, people were hyper.
There was
the tan suit gate. Yeah.
Specific scandal.
It's the biggest scandal. It's an ironic twist. We will put any Obama tan suit scandal up against other scandals of the past or present in any kind of way you want to.
Yeah.
So I think that, the reality of it is that, listen, they were always going to be a source of interest, and with that interest and with that focus came a great amount of power, because we realized very quickly that we could touch people by choices we made, right? So there were these really crazy kismet things that would happen, where we would, I talk about this, I borrowed sort of Native American pottery for the Oval Office, and then we got this call from the Smithsonian. We got a call from the Smithsonian saying that one of the pieces was done by a woman who was the living potter, and was still living on a reservation, and it was kind of unbelievable, where you realize that truly you were touching people in a very profound way by choices that you were making, and by inclusion you were making. And clearly the message to African-American artists and artisans, LGBTQ artisans and artists, I mean, women, it was a tremendous impact, and it was something that was so wonderful to be a part of. And the White House, and the Obamas in particular, were such gracious hosts in the smallest of way and the biggest of way. And, it was all about America's house. No one ever asked me the political persuasion of who I was putting in the White House. And I don't think anybody ever asked anybody who was coming to the White House.
Mm-hmm. No, and I really thought it was fascinating how, on the one hand, you were deciding, or helping be a part of the process to decide what quotes to literally put on the Oval Office rug. Yet on the other hand, you were also trying to figure out the right design so that the president and first lady could go get ice cream at 3 a.m. and not have to worry about like not tripping over things. Like there's
Yeah.
so much that goes into making those kind of decisions.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's the stuff that you do normally for a normal project. It's just, it's like the difference is you're driving along and you have a little bit of a fender bender, at 30 miles an hour, or you're on the Autobahn and you're going 200 miles an hour. The impact is a little bit different. So, the thing that's the most amazing in retrospect, the thing that was kind of terrifying was if I didn't know what I knew from having dealt with super high profile people and, you know, had been around a celebrity divorce or knew what bad press actually was, I could have gotten into some serious trouble because, like I wanted to borrow paintings and no one told me, oh, you can't take a painting off the wall of a museum. I just knew you couldn't take a painting off the wall, right? I knew, how to do things in a way that was not only appropriate, but, was correct and in fact legal. So, which sounds kooky, but it was at the time a really important deal.
Well, so outside of the White House, what project, and this may be a tough question, but over the course of your career, what project would you say you're most proud of? Or are there several off the top that you can think of that you would say those are so far like career defining accomplishments?
I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's better for other people to say that than me. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, clearly there are things which were watershed moments in my career and working for somebody like this producer, Dawn Steele, who then was head of Columbia Pictures at the time that I worked for her. I was 23 years old, and that was an incredible watershed moment for me. And, I met all sorts of people who are still clients of mine to this day. So I think that there are things which are great. They were lucky, right? There were things that were just happened that were really lucky and it worked out. But in terms of, it's interesting, it kind of sounds crazy, but I literally would say to you that the most interesting thing is the thing that I'm going to do next or the thing that I'm obsessed with next. You know what I mean? It's like, I tend not to be somebody who kind of goes into the past so much or kind of is reflective of looking behind me because it's just too wasteful of time. I'm always interested in what's happening now. And, James and I are in the desert and I'm going to do this project in Palm Springs. And so I start to research, all sorts of different architecture and working, into that process. So that's the most interesting thing is it's kind of, what's going to happen next, not so much what I did.
Well, I saw, speaking of next, that you're going to be doing the Bob Evans house. Is that right?
That's what they say. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, wow, that sounds pretty incredible.
It's really interesting because you also have look at like all great things, and certainly it's very LA centric to have the fact that it was built by this famous antique dealer kind of decorator, and clearly John Wolfe, the architect, amazing architect, and then so that's one whole. Jimmy Pendleton was the decorator who built it, and then you go to the next phase, kind of 20 years later, which is that young Bob Evans buys it, and so you have this sort of these layers of history, these sort of kind of layers of kind of stacked on top of each other, and so it's interesting because you're kind of to delve into them and look at sort of the archaeology of it is kind of interesting.
Totally. I mean, it's such an iconic house, and so it has such a history. And I mean, something like that. How are you able? Do you have to focus on it sort of singularly for a year or two, or like or are you able to sort of do multiple different projects?
Oh God, no, we are doing always lots and lots and lots of stuff at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the ways that we keep it kind of interesting that sort of projects kind of feed each other intellectually and creatively. So if I'm working on something super modern at the same time as something super traditional, they kind of relate to it, they kind of feed off of each other you're just I always think it's really interesting to look at things from a different direction, right? To look at the introduction of something really modern into a traditional house and vice versa, because I think it's just anything that kind of gives you sort of life and complexity and reveals itself to you over time is much, much more interesting, right? As opposed to, a boring one-dimensional room. So that would not be my thing. I get bored really easily.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's like something really has to be unique and challenging for it to be appealing to you. Otherwise, it's like, you know, if you're very. I'm sure you have to be very. You have a lot of opportunities. Let's put it that way. So you have to decide what's going to give you what makes it fascinating and interesting for you. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always, listen, I think when you're a perpetual student, you're always looking at stuff in a way that is kind of, I don't know, I'm always looking for something interesting or something different that I haven't done before. And at looking at kind of creating a culture, the way that you're talking about the Bob Evans houses in two different kind of aesthetic moments that kind of converge in one house. It's or this house, this Paul Williams house, and putting our stuff into it, and that those kinds of hybrids, those kinds of combinations are much more interesting than some one note, kind of really super boring idea, which you would get sick of after a while. You know what I mean? I don't. Yeah, and I mean, I also think I'm always intrigued by making things harder on myself than they are, to keep my interest and just to, because I think also it's part of the gig, right? It's to always try to pursue something interesting and do things which are extraordinarily personal for people. And the White House clearly is a hyper example of that, putting what is taking this young family, which have a whole identity and kind of built in sort of persona and personality, and sort of splicing it into this giant thing, which is the history of the White House, and being aware of not screwing up in the sense of these are people who are so extraordinarily respectful of tradition and history. They didn't they weren't interested in blowing it up. They were interested in putting taking their moment in history, but not neither destroying the past or making it difficult in the future for somebody else. The thing that Mrs. Obama was always so incredibly clear about with, what does this do? This is great for us, but what does this do for the next family and the next family after that? So we put in like a big lighting construction project to light the upstairs. This was like, this will be great for the next families. It'll be great for my families, but it'll be great for the next families too. So, it was great to work with someone who had that kind of macro vision of everything and understood that this moment was not going to be forever, and to enjoy it and make it comfortable, but not to leave such an imprint that it wouldn't be able to be personalized and work and comfortable for the next family. So
no, it's fascinating, and the book is amazing and really interesting, and I'm so grateful to you for taking the time, and I hope I get to see you in person soon.
I know. I want to. Well, hopefully we'll not here. We'll see you in Palm Springs, which will be great when it starts to cool off a little bit.
Totally. And please send James my love.
I will. I see him greeting everyone who is joining, basically. Always the mayor.
Hey, it's I see there have been some of your friends on here.
I know. I didn't realize I had so many friends. Where are your parents, by the way? They're in Thailand? Where are they?
My parents are in Thailand, yeah, and they were supposed to be here for June, July, August, and then, obviously with COVID, they decided to stay there. And I'm figuring out now whether or not I want to go out there to see them, because in all likelihood, it's probably not a good idea for them. They have other than seeing me, which of course they want to do, not much of a reason for them to come here at the moment. So
right.
We're figuring out the logistics, but hopefully one day soon.
Good. Well, we will make a real vested interest to see you in the next couple weeks. But you're so nice to do this for me, and I hope people buy the book, and Duke will sign them for you.
Hey, please go out and buy the book. It's fantastic. So everybody. But no, thank you, Michael. Really. Talk soon.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Duke. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night. Bye.